Hello, welcome back to AP Psychology. My name is Mrs. Seguin. Today we are in AP Psychology Unit 4, Lesson 4, where we talk about social and cognitive factors in learning. Up to this point, we have been talking about classical and operant conditioning in depth, big parts of that being behaviorist, of course. But how does our behavior, that observable behavior that the behaviorists loved so much, how do we fit social factors and cognitive factors in with it? So today we're going to discuss social learning or observational learning. They're the same thing. And then we're going to discuss or suggest how behavior modification, coping strategies, and self-control can be used to address behavioral problems. Observational learning, social learning, whatever you want to call it, you are learning through observing in social environments. So it really works either way. We've talked about this briefly, but modeling is that process of observing and imitating behavior. So think monkey see, monkey do. We talked about Albert Bandura and the Bobo ball. Bleh. We talked about Albert Bandura and the Bobo doll experiment. In that experiment, basically what happened was children watched an adult interact with a room full of toys, specifically a big Bobo doll, which is basically a big blow-up doll that rocks back and forth and has a weight in the bottom, so it pops back up if you hit it. And they would watch the adult with this behavior towards the Bobo doll, and the adults were supposed to go in and be very aggressive towards the doll, scream at it and hit it and kick it and, bat it around. And when the child would go in, they would do the same thing. So he was learning, or he was showing that children learn through modeling. They will repeat the behavior that they are shown from an adult. We also have in our brains what's called mirror neurons. These are neurons in the frontal lobe, so right up at the front, that some scientists believe fire, so the neurons send out a signal or fire, right? When we perform certain activities and observe another person doing something. So it's literally monkey see, monkey do, and it's actually very prominent in monkeys. They will see something and then do it because their mirror neurons fired. Okay, so with social learning, we need to discuss how this fits in with behaviorism, because pure behaviorists like Ivan Pavlov and B.F. Skinner genuinely believed that there was no room for social or cognitive in the behaviorist perspective. They wanted to look at only observable behavior. They didn't want to look at thought processes because thought processes, you can't see them, right? They wanted it to be purely observable, scientific. Let's look at how social learning applies to our everyday lives. And honestly, I think this one applies hugely, right? It is an incredibly important part of human development. We learn by watching others. It starts with our parents and our siblings and the people that we are around when we're little bitty. And then you go to school and you learn by watching your teacher and your peers. And then you become a teenager and you really learn by watching your peers. And you learn by watching people older than you. And you start to become admirers of certain people. And you see celebrities and you repeat their behavior. You'll even see children repeat behavior of cartoon characters that they see on TV. What impact, though, can this social learning have? So we can learn two different types of behavior. The first is pro-social behaviors. These are positive, constructive, helpful behaviors. Think Russell from Up. But we can also learn antisocial behavior. Let me clarify something. Antisocial does not mean introverted. It doesn't mean that you don't like to be around people or that you're drained around people. Antisocial is behaviors that are against societally acceptable norms. So these are things like fighting, hitting, biting, screaming, things that people look at you and like, why are you doing that? Those are antisocial behaviors. Stealing, killing, violence, they can get to extremes, abuse, aggression, teasing. So that's why the picture here on the slides of the little boy being teased, those are antisocial behaviors. Examples of really good pro-social behaviors: helping someone cross the street or your porch, or I guess flying to South America with balloons to help this poor old man, right? Sharing with each other, being kind to people, holding the door, just saying good morning. Those are pro-social behaviors. They benefit society rather than take away from society. So like we talked about before, behaviorists were not excited about the idea of letting cognitive behavior or cognitive psychologists anywhere near their behavioral science, right? They were like, no, thoughts don't have anything to do with why we do the things we do. We just do them because of environmental stimuli. However, they struggled to argue with these things. In classical conditioning, conditioned likes and dislikes are stronger when people notice and are aware of the associations they've learned. Think of it this way. You may say a word a lot that you don't ever notice you're saying, but then someone points it out to you, and now you hear it every single time you say it. When you know that on the 15th of every month you crave chocolate, that association grows stronger. Operant conditioning. Animals respond more and more as they get closer to an anticipated reward when they're on that fixed interval schedule. So if they know that every 5 times they're going to get a reward, when they get to number 3 or number 4, their responses get stronger. In other words, your cognition, the way you think about something, it matters. It plays a role in your classical and operant conditioning. Let's talk about motivation. So intrinsic motivation is a desire to perform a behavior effectively for its own sake. So let's say you love playing soccer because you love playing soccer. That's intrinsically motivated to play soccer. However, if you're playing soccer because you think your parents like you more when you play soccer, then that's an extrinsic motivator to play soccer. You're not playing soccer because you love the sport. You're playing soccer because you want that reward. So extrinsic motivation is that desire to perform a behavior to receive a reward or to avoid a punishment. Intrinsic motivation is a much more powerful force towards behavior change than extrinsic motivation. We have to use extrinsic motivation when we don't have intrinsic motivation. So if I have a student, for example, who has no intrinsic motivation to do homework, I may have to use external rewards. For example, that 8th grader that I had who just would not turn in work until I gave them Jolly Ranchers. And then they would do the behavior that I was wanting for an extrinsic reward, but they had no intrinsic motivation. Over-justification, however, happens when you are intrinsically motivated to do something, but then someone applies an extrinsic motivator. So let's say you love reading, like it's your favorite thing in the whole world. You love reading, right? And your mother offers to pay you to read. Okay, you were intrinsically motivated to read already. You didn't need the money to read, right? But now she's offering to pay you to read. Well, now it's harder for you to muster up the intrinsic motivation to read because now you're going to get money for it. And so an over-justification effect will happen if someone is intrinsically motivated to do something and then you add too much motivation, and then the extrinsic motivation will supplant the intrinsic motivation. Coping strategies. So we talked about emotional coping earlier, but let's talk about problem-focused coping. So problem-focused coping is attempting to alleviate stress directly by changing the stressor or the way we interact with the stressor. So let's say you have 1,000 pieces of homework, it is sitting down and conquering the homework. Emotion-focused coping is attempting to alleviate stress by avoiding or ignoring a stressor, so just setting the stressor aside for a minute and attending to the emotional needs related to the stress reaction. So let's say you're just overwhelmed today and you've got 1,000 pieces of homework. So let's deal with the overwhelmed first. Let's go take a shower or go for a run or write everything down that you've got to do so that you're not feeling overwhelmed by it and it's at least outside of your brain, right? And then we can deal with the stressor later. Let's talk about self-control. Self-control has a lot to do with your behaviors, obviously. Your successful coping with the things that go on around you is based on your sense of personal control. So your sense of feeling like you control something in your environment rather than feeling helpless. Learned helplessness comes from that perceived lack of control that we talked about. An external locus of control is that perception that chance or outside forces beyond your personal control determine your fate. So no matter what you do, someone out there controls, or something, or whatever the circumstances are, control you and what you do and who you become. An internal locus of control is that perception that we control our own fate. It's my homework didn't get done, but that was on me. I didn't do my homework. Not, my homework didn't get done because the environment didn't allow me to do my homework, but my homework didn't get done because I didn't do it. That's an internal versus an external locus of control. And then self-control itself, though, is the ability to control your impulses and to delay short-term gratification for greater long-term rewards. So it's, I may not go out and hang out with my friends tonight because I have a test to study for, but I'm going to pass the test tomorrow, and then I can go out and hang out. Self-control requires attention, it requires energy, but it's actually a really great predictor of good health, of higher income, of better school performance, because if you can control your behavior, you feel like you're in control of your behavior, you're going to perform better. Why not? Studies have shown self-control to be a better predictor of future academic and life success than the IQ score. So your level of intelligence has less to do with how successful you are than how much self-control you have, which is incredible, right? Self-control is like a muscle. If you use it, or if you don't use it, it gets weak. It recovers after a rest period, and then it grows stronger with exercise. So as you continue to use it, it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. All right, today we talked about the definitions and application of social learning. We talked about cognitive influences on learning. We talked about motivation and behavior, and we talked about problem and emotion-focused coping and self-control and behavior. That is all I have for you today. I will see you in class tomorrow. Bye.